So there's no question that wildlife is suffering, but as gardeners we can really encourage biodiversity. Whether you've got a massive garden or a teeny tiny courtyard patio, then you can still encourage wildlife into your garden. And I'm going to show you how you can create a perfect pot for pollinators that's also going to encourage other wildlife into your garden too. So whatever type of container you're going to use, make sure it's got a drainage hole and make sure you cover that drainage hole. Now I know some people say you don't need to bother doing it, but I find that if it gets blocked up with compost, then your pot doesn't drain really well and things can rot in the bottom of waterlogged compost. You can use pretty much anything for blocking up your drainage holes. I live by the seaside, I do a lot of shell collecting, so I'm going to use an oyster shell because it's quite a big hole in the bottom, as you can see. So I'm going to place that there. Then I've got some old plastic pots that I'm going to put in the bottom as well. I'm going to give them a good splash. So what do you need to create a wildlife friendly pot? Well, obviously you need plants that are good for pollinators. Now they don't have to be native plants. In fact, one of my favourites is the Verbena bonariensis, which is really, really tall, and that will flower from June to November if you're lucky, and that will be covered in bees and butterflies. But another favourite of mine that I love to use, and this is Scabious. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's a perennial, so it will come back each year, and because it's purple, that is the colour that a lot of pollinating insects are attracted to most of all. So this will go in the middle of my container. I've also got a cosmos. Now cosmos are quite easy to grow from seed, but because we've had such a cold wet spring, I have had to buy a pot, but I have got some smaller ones that are coming on that I will probably add in. And again, opened is an open centre. This is what you want. You want it so that the insect can easily get to the nectar and to the pollen. And it's also just such a pretty flower. And the more you deadhead it, the more it will keep on flowering. And then finally, for my flowers, is an Echinacea. Now this isn't in flower at the moment, but it's got loads and loads of buds that you can see. And it's going to be again covered in bees and butterflies once it starts to flower. Now I've chosen a white flower to give a bit of difference in colour, but also because there are insects that are attracted to white, and they are night flying creatures like a lot of moths, and moths will come out in the evening, and white is the colour that shows up the most when it starts to get a bit dark. So I've got a lovely big white Echinacea here. Now it doesn't have to all be about flowers, because we're talking about wildlife, not just pollinators. So by having something like this tall ornamental grass here, which I divided from some of my other grasses in the autumn, it means you're creating habitat for smaller insects where they can hide and burrow during the colder months. But also I've got a lot of damselflies in this garden because of my small pond, and they will love to land and hide in this grass. Plus it will also give it a difference in texture, and I'm also planting the pot for me because I'm going to be looking at it and I want it to look pretty, and this will give it a nice bit of movement and texture. And then finally I've got some ivy here. Now ivy is absolutely brilliant. Not only will it look pretty by trailing over the container, but again it's an amazing habitat for all sorts of creatures. Now this ivy doesn't flower, but if you do have a flowering and berrying ivy, they are one of the best sources of not only nectar but also habitat for so many creatures, including birds. So if you can, try not to cut ivy out of your garden completely. A top tip about using broken plastic pots and trays in your containers is that it means they're much more lightweight. So if you are renting, or if you just want to move the pot around because of the sunshine, it's going to be a lot easier. So not only does it save you a bit of money, it'll save you back as well. So another really vital aspect to look at when it comes to making a wildlife friendly container is what sort of compost you're going to use. And for me, it's got to be a peat-free because the damage that has been caused to nature and wildlife habitats by extracting peat has been irreversible, and there's been so much habitat loss, and it still is being lost. So if you can, use a peat-free. Now I'm also using one that is specially developed for containers and also hanging baskets, because it means it will help retain the moisture a little bit more, because whenever anything is put in a container, you are totally responsible for keeping it hydrated. And even if you get a lot of rain, if you've got a container with lots and lots of foliage, that rain isn't always going to penetrate right to where the roots need it. So make sure you choose the right compost. So once you've filled your container about halfway, get your plants and start placing them. You never quite know how much space they're going to need, but always leave at least 4 centimetres gap for watering at the top of the pot. Otherwise all the water's just going to run off down the side of the pot and the plants won't get any moist. Because my grass is the biggest pot, that will go in first. So that is about the right level, which means that I'll need to build up the compost a little bit in order to fit in the other slightly smaller plants. Now because my grass is going to be at the back, I'm going to twist this around. Another good thing about using a tub truck is that you've got easy hand and speed. So this one I'll place around here. Don't push it right to the back, because you want to make sure you've got the compost behind it so it doesn't get too hot from the thick plastic warming up in the sun. So to me, planting up is one of the really fun bits about creating your containers. So don't rush it. And what I've realised is that actually, now I've put it up on the table and lifted it, everything's sunk a bit. So I am going to put in a little bit more compost just to lift it all up a bit. So I'm going to start with the biggest first, which is my grass, and I'm very carefully just going to knock it out. She says carefully, grasses are pretty tough. So that's got a really nice root base, doesn't need teasing out, it's perfect for this pot. So I'm going to twist it in, and then I'm just going to do the same with all the others. If you find the roots are stopping you getting the pot out, just tease them out gently. If you break some of them, it's not the end of the world. Look at this. So this is when people talk about teasing your roots out. So that's all I'm going to do. And that will encourage the roots to spread out, go deep into the container, rather than just keep wrapping themselves around the pot. And because this is a perennial, it will really help spread this plant. I'm going to make sure it's facing forward. Again, lovely roots, but they're not blocking up the holes, so this should come out fairly simply. There we go, lovely. In she goes. Most of the hole is ready for her. Echinacea, again, the roots look good at the bottom, not coming through. Always check for any nasties hiding. Although this is for wildlife, I do tend to draw the line at slugs and snails. And the ivy, it's looking a bit soggy, not surprising. All good. And then what's left for me to do now is cover around the rest of the exposed plant with compost. So now I'm happy with how I've placed everything. I've pretty much planted, and I'm just going to use some more compost to fill up around the gaps. Make sure you firm in the compost as you go around. You don't want any wobbling. If you're in a windy spot like I am, then you can get plants wobbling, and that causes root rot, which in turn kind of kills the plant after a while. I'm not going to get any more frosts now, but also I want to make sure they don't dry out. And if there are gaps where you've got your plant and your compost, then they're going to dry out much more quickly, and you don't want that. Don't forget about down the side of your plants. It's easy to forget and leave gaps there. So just go around making sure, firming everything in. Don't be too gentle. But then again, you don't want to be too rough either. So I'm happy with that, and they're all going to have room to grow. But it's so easy to just think about the pretty insects, the butterflies, the bees, and the caterpillars. But this is just a pot for pollinators. It's also wildlife. And so what I'm going to do, as well as the compost, I've got a variety of things that's going to help provide little habitats for the different creatures that might need a home, especially in a smaller garden. So again, as I said, I live by the sea. As I mentioned that, I've got some seashells, and they'll do a really nice job of providing safe little spaces. Now, it doesn't matter if they aren't going to be seen and get overgrown by the plants. You know they're there and you'll know they're doing the job. I'm also going to put in some pebbles. Again, going to provide an extra home. And then with this saucer, what I'm going to do, I'm going to just put this in the middle, and I'm going to fill it with a little bit of water, and that's going to be a really nice stopping station for any insect that needs a little bit of extra hydration. So what I've also got is an old terracotta pot, and I'm not going to plant it up. I'm actually going to fill it. I've got some broken sticks from hydrangea that I pruned earlier this year, and I've also got some bamboo canes, and they're great because they're hollow, so that means insects can crawl inside them. So I'm going to fill that up with these sticks, and I'm going to pop that on its side in the pot somewhere. So again, a lovely safe refuge. Another little tip for growing anything in containers, and I know it's a really simple one, but wait until you've got it in your permanent position before watering, because watering will make your pot extra heavy and just that little bit harder to move.